right, so this whole maimid, this whole gathering, this whole get-together has been, as it's been discussed, as it's been explained, it's about one thing, and one thing alone, which is about drawing out that desire, that tefillah, that wanting, that thirst for geula. And I'll tell you the truth, and it's also been mentioned that there is miniyas, there could be some obstacles along the way that we have to break through, we have to go over. And so I'll tell you something. For me personally, as a Farbrengen, will be personal. For me personally, to me there's one miniyah, for me personally. And it's 2 words. Each word by itself is a holy, Jewish, beautiful word. But you put them together, to me it becomes one of the darkest sentences in all of language. And that's Yeridus Hadaris. Yeridus Hadaris. We know there's such a thing, there's such a phenomenon, you can't deny such a thing. That as the generations go on, as we move farther and farther away from Har Sinai, the collective koiches hanefesh, the powers of understanding Torah, of pouring one's heart out in davening, they seem to be diminished. And it's an amazing thing, as we get even closer to Mashiach and we move further and further into that tekufa that's defined as ikvus de Mashiach, then the yerida, the descent, the shrinking of the souls of the generation, it seems to be, in the language of Chassidus, I guess, it's shaloi ke'erech. It's not seder hishtalshelus. It's not a usual descent from one level to the next, It drops off a cliff. Anyone that's in any position of leadership knows that the generations, that every 2 years is a new generation, and it's the Yeridus Hadoris that exists is shaloi ke'erech. It's without measure. It doesn't fit the normal pattern of just 1 degree less. And ironically, that major task of pushing us over the threshold of geula is ironically given to the weakest of generations, the generation that compared to the earlier ones is mamash nothing. So to me, that's a kasha. How do we overcome that? And we have to understand that when, like the Gemara says, that before the Rebbeinu Shalom gave Moshe Rabbeinu the Torah, the malachim in heaven, the angels in heaven had a kasha, ma enesh ki siskarenu, what is the human being worth that you should give him such a gift? When the malachim had such a question, that's not just something that happened once upon a time, that's recorded in the Gemara and we review it. That's an ongoing question that sometimes plagues the mind of a Jew. Ma enesh ki siskarenu, what value do you have? How is it possible that such a task, like we saw from the video, the Rebbe himself, to be given over to Ikkus of the Mashiach, such a thing, how can we handle such a thing? How can we make sense of it? All right, so listen, so I'm no one worthy of giving explanations, giving biurim, but, even an Amoritz can bump into a truth once in a while, so it's just, it's not so crazy if what I'm about to say is maybe true. And even if it's not b'teres tefillah, like we're going to mention, to speak b'teres tefillah. So it's like this. It's not a simple idea, but I'm going to try to package it as concisely and as simply and as quickly as possible. In the writings of the Rishonim, it goes back to Rishonim already, the Ravid in a number of places. It's mentioned in the Zohar Kaddish in a few places. In the Beis Medrash of the Vilna Gaon, in the writings of the Gra, Al Pi Kabbalah, this is expanded upon in great detail. Is that the Rishonim tell us the tradition is as follows, that one of the major miniyas for geula is not necessarily like a certain date that the Rebbeinu Shalom has. Okay, this is going to be the date, B'itach Hishan, and so on. There is a requirement, and it's going to sound a little bit funny, there is a requirement for Nishmas Moshe Rabbeinu, for the soul of Moshe Rabbeinu to make its way into the world a certain number of times. And in order for geula to take place, Nishmas Moshe, the soul of Moshe Rabbeinu, has to be fully unpackaged and fully expressed. And that takes many times. And the Sfarim talk about this a certain number of times. We're not going to go into how many times and so on. In order for Nishmas Moshe to come, geula, just like Moshe Rabbeinu was the first redeemer, geula depends on the soul of Moshe Rabbeinu. Now Moshe Rabbeinu's neshama, that's a big neshama, you talked about Yeridus Hadoris. Just like the last generation is, a drop off a cliff down, Moshe Rabbeinu is not just the highest in Seder Shtalshus. Moshe Rabbeinu is very, very big. And Moshe Rabbeinu's soul has to come down X number of times for Gula to take place. As I mentioned, this is something that we find in many Sfarim. There's a Maisa they say from Rav Nachman Haradanker, that he was one of the Talmidei Baal Shem. And he was thinking about making Aliyah, going to Eretz Yisrael. And so he asked his Rebbe, he asked the Baal Shem Tov. And the Baal Shem Tov said, go to the mikveh, and an answer will come. So he goes to the mikveh, and he dunks into the mikveh. And when he dunks the first time, he sees himself in Yerushalayim. Okay? He dunks again. He sees himself in Beis HaMikdash. He dunks a third time. He's in Kodesh HaKodshim, but there's no Aron. There's no Aron. Okay? So he goes back to the Baal Shem. And the Baal Shem Tov says like this. The Baal Shem Tov says, you go to Eretz Yisrael, it's fine. You could find the Beis HaMikdash, but the Aron is in Mezhevish. The Aron is in Mezhevish. We know that the Baal Shem Tov, the whole Torah of Baal Shem Tov, as was mentioned, is the inyan of Torah HaMashiach. The Aron is that vessel that's Moshe Rabbeinu. Like the Rambam writes in Pirush Mishnayos that there was only one person that was able to go into Kodesh HaKodshim at will, not Yom Kippur, nothing, just whenever he wanted. That was Moshe Rabbeinu. Mibein Shnei HaKruvim. It says in Pasuk that the Rebbeinu Shalom speaks to Moshe from between the two cherubs. Mibein Shnei HaKruvim is Rosh Tevis Moshe. So this idea of Geula being the emergence of Moshe Rabbeinu, as is mentioned by the Zohar Kodesh, the Vilna Gaon, and so on, this is echoed by the Baal Shem Tov in his language, that his Torah, which is Torah HaMashiach, is the Bechin of the Aron. So here's the problem, just to make the problem even worse. So if the ultimate task that we have, that we're charged with, is to bring Geula, which means to somehow embody Nishmas Moshe, Saif B'Kasha. Mele if you're born with a big neshama like the Lubavitcher Rebbe, or a tzaddik yesod olam, in whatever the generation might be. So those are big neshamas. Those are Moshe Rabbeinu dik neshamas. Mele. But for every single one of us to be given that task to bring Geula within ourselves, befrat u'bechlal, and Geula depends on Nishmas Moshe, how could such a thing be? How could such a thing be? So you read this Adoris, it's one thing if there's a certain quota of mitzvahs, but now we're saying that it has to be that you have to literally embody the greatest neshama of all time of Moshe Rabbeinu. And, by the way, you read this Adoris. So how is that possible? I better not stop now, right? That's like, I have to give an answer. All right, so there's an idea that we find in the Sfarim HaKadoshim. It's talked about by the Rashash, the Beis Medrash of the Sfardish Mekubalim. It's expounded upon and unpackaged by the Taras Chacham, Chaim de la Rose, in that world. The following idea is said, and it's as follows. There are two categories of neshamas. There's one category of neshamas, which is that every individual neshama has its designated madrega and designated koiches. And within that category of neshamas, that every single individual is a designated neshama. You're coming from, you have a tremendous amount of chesed, or a tremendous amount of gevurah, or a tremendous amount of beauty, whatever the midas are, whatever the particular madrega is, that's your neshama. And within that category, there is the biggest of all, and that's Moshe Rabbeinu. But Seder Rashash is another category of neshamas. And this other category of neshamas, when you look at each and every one of them, you know what madrega they have? They have madrega of nothing. Of nothing. Now who has those neshamas? That's the Mashiach. That's the generation before Mashiach comes. If you want to identify what's your madrega, where are you holding? Nothing. But here's the irony. The Rashash taught us that itself, which is an unbelievable maybe weakness in those neshamas, is its greatest strength. Do you know why? Because it says in Pasuk, Vayaminu b'Hashem Moshe Avdai, that Chazal say Moshe Rabbeinu is shakul keneged kol Yisrael, that Moshe Rabbeinu equals all 600,000 Yidden, which means that there is a way to duplicate Nishmas Moshe, and that is by not having your own personal madrega. That all you are is nothing but an empty space within which the collective powers of all of Klal Yisrael is able to pool, concentrate, and express itself. And you know what the irony is? It's davka neshamas that when you identify them and you want to say, like, what's your color, what's your inyan, what's your madrega? And the answer is, I got nothing. those are specifically the neshamas that are custom made to be just pools, to be just places in which the collective energy of Klal Yisrael is able to manifest. And this is one of the most essential Torahs of Chassidus, which is Farbrengen, of Yidden coming together, and all of a sudden, every single individual person has their limitations, and maybe extreme limitations. But it's because of our own personal nothingness that we're able to do a mitzvah, and we can say, the Rabbeinu Shloim, who am I? I'm mamish nothing. But you know who I'm doing this mitzvah on behalf of? You know what I want to embody. You know what I want to be activated through me. I am doing this b'shem Klal Yisrael, on behalf of all of Klal Yisrael. And we talked about, how we saw from the videos and so on, spreading the light and connecting to another Yid and focusing on being mashpia to other Yidden. 100,000,000%, that's everyone's achrayus. But even in a situation of where you're davening your own Shemoneh Esrei, there is a way of davening your own personal Shemoneh Esrei, of learning your own pasuk in Chumash, saying a Perek Tehillim, even davening for your own inyanim, where you say to yourself, Rabbeinu Shloim, I don't have the strength nor the desire to come to you as just me individually. Because me individually, who am I? But Adarab, because who I am is mamish nothing, I am able to say, Rabbeinu Shloim, I am emptying myself out of my own personal color, of my own personal madrega, my own personal shirish, and I am going to act as just a klal, just a way through which Klal Yisrael can speak to you through me. And all I want to be is nothing but a mouthpiece for the millions of Yidden out there that can't talk to you directly or don't know that they can talk to you directly. And even the Yidden that can't speak to you directly, I want to just be a pool within which Klal Yisrael's energy is able to concentrate. And it's Bodik Menus, it's tested and proven, that Tzaddikim have told us this, that even Yidden, Davka Yidden, who in their own personal madregas might be extremely limited, but if they embrace an Avodas Hashem, that's one of 600,000 Yidden serving the Rebbeinu Shalom through them, and seeing yourself as just part of that collective whole of Klal Yisrael, and you're able to do that specifically because of the fact that you are completely transparent and translucent, and a bechina of ayin and a mamash of nothingness. So the koiches that could come out of you and the koiches that could be manifest through you are shaloi ke'erech, are completely transcendent from the limitations that you might be as an individual person. There is a way, davka, specifically, ironically, it's specifically because of Avodas Hadaros. It's specifically because of the limitations of each one of us as an individual person. It's davka because of that we could all collectively be the Moshe Rabbeinus and allow that nakuda of Moshe Rabbeinu, that nakuda of the Raya Mehemna, the trusted shepherd, the Yichidish Nefesh to express itself. By us coming to Rabbeinu Shalom and saying, Rabbeinu Shalom, I'm not davening to you because of my name and because of who I am, as if I'm an individual person just coming. Rabbeinu Shalom, I'm coming to you on behalf of all of Klal Yisrael. And it sounds silly, like presumptuous. Who are you? The answer is, exactly, I'm nothing. I'm nobody. That's exactly why I'm the perfect person to be the vessel for all of Klal Yisrael to come to you. And the koiches nefesh that an individual can absorb and transmit even to others is unbelievably, infinitely compounded because of this. And this is exactly what the Aron is. What's the Aron? The Aron is Eina Min Hamida. We know one of the miracles of the Aron in the Kodesh HaKodshim is that it didn't take up any space. Like you measured from one side of the room into the other and so on, it didn't take up any physical space. The question is, Mefarshim ask, God doesn't do miracles for nothing. Who's noticing that? The Kohen Gadol in Kodesh HaKodshim is the only one that goes in once a year, and he's not taking measuring sticks. Why would God do this miracle for nothing? The answer is, it's not a miracle. That's what the Aron is. The Aron is nothing. And that's exactly why it's able to be the source of divine light into the world, because it's nothing. Every single one of us, we know our deficiencies, we know our chesroinus. And the Yetzer Hara tells us, because you're chesroinus, because of your deficiencies, who are you to daven? Who are you to learn? Who are you to tell other Yidden about davening and learning? Who are you to give chizik to other Yidden? Who are you to talk about Gula, to talk about Mashiach, to take upon yourself avoid of afatas miyanis. Who are you? So what's the response to the Yetzer Hara? The response is, exactly what Moshe Rabbeinu said to the Malachim. Malachim said, Yetzer Hara, you have all these problems. Moshe Rabbeinu said, exactly. Because we're nothing, because we're ayin, mamish ayin, because of that, ein soif, infinite kaiches can pour to the world through us. This is what you find by all the tzaddikim. Everyone talked about this. Even the great Rosh Hashiva of pre-war Europe, Rabbi Shimon Shkop in his Hakdama to Shari Yosher, he talks about this. He says that the key of Avodas Hashem is what? Is redefining your sense of self, expanding the I of who you are. When a baby's born, a baby's little, what is I? When the baby says I, what does it mean? It means him or her. When it gets a little bit older, what does I mean? It means the family. You get married, it means your wife. Shimon said, a big tzaddik, you know what I means? I means Klal Yisrael. And that could happen in two ways. Either you're given Nishmas Moshe, top of the Everest, or your mamash nothing, and all you are is a pool within which the kaiches of Klal Yisrael are able to concentrate. Bez Hashem, we should all be zeich in our own lives. Mashiach Bez Hashem should manifest in an open and revealed way, b'karev, mamish. But the ikar is that a person should have the moichen of Mashiach, the moichen of Gula in their own lives. And the moichen of Mashiach, the moichen of Gula means to be able to do everything b'shem Kol Yisrael. Just end off with a quick story. There's a Maisa of the Yid, very, very quickly, a Maisa of the Yid that he once had a lot of problems, a lot of tzaras, whatever it is, a whole peckle of stuff. And he went to the Rishner to get a bracha. And so he had to wait on a long line to get the Rishner. Eventually he gets the Rishner. And the Rishner, he pours his heart out. And the Rishner says, Eivish is helping. Hashem should help. Finished. And like that, He was hoping for something a little bit more than that. So he leaves the room. And so one of the sons of the Rishner saw that this Yid leaves the Rebbe's office, the Rebbe's study, and his face is down. That's not the way it's supposed to be. So he asked him what happened. So the person says, I was hoping for a little bit more than just Eivish is helping. So he goes back. So he says like this: go back in line, go back to my father, and say, Rebbe, what's going to be until the Eibishter helps? So he goes back in. Okay, it's a good question. So he goes in, and he says, I came before, and the Rebbe gave me a bracha, Eibishter's elf, and I want to know what's going to be biz the Eibishter's elf, and what's going to be until that. And the original said the Eibishter's elf and biz the Eibishter's elf. So that's not like pushing him to the side. That's a big bracha. That's a big bracha. To have moichen of Mashiach. To have moichen of Mashiach, and to be able to say to yourself that I embrace that avoida of living b'shem Kol Yisrael, of living Molard's Deis Hashem Kamayim Chasma, being a little Aron HaKodesh, which is mamish nothing, but through me can be manifest mamish ein saif. That's a life worth living. Hashem shall bless each and every one of us that we should all be zeichet to experience a gula pratis, Bani Chaim Ezayni. But whenever the Rebbeinu Shalom gives brachas to Yidden, Bani Chaim Ezayni, it's always with his stamp, it's always be'etzem elikus, just packaged in Bani Chaim Ezayni. The ikar bracha is that a person should be zeicha to receive elikus, to receive the Rebbeinu Shalom himself. And bekelim shayim in all sorts of ways with Bani Chaim Ezayni, we shall be zeicha to experience a gula pratis, and through that a gula klolis. Be es kol tzedek b'rachamim, v'me'ever yemenu amen.